I was never the popular kid. While others walked into school with brand new sneakers and expensive jackets, I wore the same scuffed shoes for 3 years straight. My clothes were hand-me-downs, my backpack was falling apart, and lunch often consisted of a single sandwich wrapped in yesterday's paper. To my classmates, I was the perfect target. They called me the broke kid, whispered jokes behind my back, and laughed at me openly in the cafeteria. Even teachers seemed to have written me off. When they spoke about bright futures, they never looked in my direction. At home, things weren't any better. My relatives compared me constantly to my cousins. Look at Michael, he's going to medical school. Look at Sarah, she's already winning awards. And then there's Daniel. My uncle once said during a family dinner, this boy will probably end up pumping gas for the rest of his life. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I just clenched my jaw, pretending their words didn't hurt, but inside, they were burning me alive. That night, lying on my thin mattress, I made myself a promise. I will prove them wrong. I will rise so high that the same people who laughed at me will bow their heads in shame. The struggle began. I started working at 16. Nights stacking shelves at a grocery store, mornings delivering newspapers, weekends washing dishes. My hands were always sore, my body always tired. There were nights when I went to bed hungry because every cent I earned went toward books, online courses, or saving for something bigger. People saw me as desperate, struggling, weak. But I wasn't weak, I was building. Every insult, every laugh, every dismissive glance became fuel. When my classmates were out partying, I stayed home teaching myself skills nobody thought I was capable of. Coding, marketing, design, I absorbed everything like a sponge. While they mocked me, I was preparing. The first breakthrough. At 18, I launched my first small online store. It wasn't much, cheap electronics, refurbished phones, small gadgets, but it was mine. I reinvested every dollar back into the business. When it failed the first time, I didn't quit. I studied harder, improved, and tried again. 2 years later, that tiny online store grew into a profitable business. I hired employees, rented an office, and suddenly the boy in old shoes was becoming something none of them expected. By 25, I had multiple companies, international clients, and wealth beyond what my family ever imagined. I traveled the world, drove cars they only saw in magazines, and lived in a home they could only dream of. But more than the money, it was the respect, the acknowledgement from people who once laughed at me. The world now introduced me as Daniel Carter, the entrepreneur, the visionary, the success story. And then it happened. One summer evening, my family held a large gathering. It had been years since I'd seen them. I walked in wearing a tailored seat, confident, calm. Suddenly, the room that once mocked me fell silent. Their eyes widened, their fake smiles spread across their faces. Daniel, my aunt said, her voice dripping with forced sweetness. We're so proud of you. We always knew you'd make it. I almost laughed out loud. Always knew? These were the same people who told me I would fail, the same ones who mocked me for being poor, who dismissed me as a lost cause. Then came the requests. My uncle leaned in and whispered about a business idea he wanted me to invest in. A cousin asked if I could get him a job in one of my companies. Another relative hinted about needing help with debt. Suddenly, the people who once treated me like garbage were standing in line begging for favors. The answer they didn't expect. I let them speak. I listened patiently. Then, when they were done, I looked at them all and said, you laughed when I had nothing. You mocked me, dismissed me, and told me I would never succeed. Now that I have everything, you want me to help you. No, family isn't the people who laugh at your pain. Family is the people who stand beside you when you're at your lowest. And none of you were there. The room fell silent. Faces that once smiled were now frozen, ashamed. My uncle tried to argue, my cousins muttered excuses, but I stood firm. I walked out that night with my head high, leaving behind the same people who once left me behind. The lesson? Today, when people ask me what success feels like, I tell them this. It's not the cars, the money, or the luxury. It's walking into a room full of people who doubted you and seeing them speechless. It's turning every insult into motivation. It's knowing that you proved them wrong not with words, but with actions. They laughed at me when I was poor, but now they beg for my help. And I don't regret a single moment.